You won't believe what I'm about to tell you. If someone had told me a month ago that I'd uncover not one, but 3 betrayals in the span of a week, I would have laughed and called them a liar. But the truth has a way of creeping into the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to throw your entire life into chaos. Marriage isn't a sprint. It's a marathon of compromise, trust, and faith in the person you vowed to spend your life with. At least, that's what I told myself when things started feeling off. 7 years into our marriage, Amelia and I had settled into a comfortable routine, or so I thought. Amelia had always been fiercely independent, the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. Her job as a writer for a lifestyle magazine had her constantly buzzing around town, attending events, and interviewing high-profile personalities. I worked on the stock exchange, surrounded by numbers, chaos, and the pressure to perform. We balanced each other out, or that's what I used to believe. It began subtly, like a faint hum you barely notice until it grows louder. She'd started taking her phone everywhere, including the bathroom. I'd catch her texting late at night, her screen dimly lighting her face as she angled it away from me. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off. "It's work, Noah," she'd say. "You know how it is." But did I? The Amelia I married didn't hide things, not like this. Then there were the late-night dinners, the weekend work retreats, and the increasing number of events that didn't include a plus one. "Just industry stuff," she explained. "It's boring, really." But there was something about the way she said it, a glimmer in her eyes that felt rehearsed. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, marriage is built on trust, right? It wasn't until one quiet evening that my first real seed of doubt was planted. I was scrolling through Facebook, mindlessly catching up on the lives of friends I barely kept in touch with, when a notification popped up. A woman named Olivia had sent me a message. I didn't know her personally, but her last name rang a bell. Her husband, Ethan, worked in the same industry as Amelia. We'd met briefly at a holiday party years ago. Her message was polite, almost apologetic. "Hi, Noah, I'm Olivia. I know this might seem out of the blue, but I think we need to talk about something important regarding our spouses." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. What did she mean? Why was she messaging me? I wanted to dismiss it, chalk it up to some misunderstanding, but her words lingered, heavy with unspoken meaning. Against my better judgment, I replied. The conversation started cautiously, but it didn't take long for Olivia to get to the point. She had found texts, intimate, explicit messages between her husband, Ethan, and my wife. Messages that left no room for doubt about what had been going on behind my back. The ground beneath me felt like it was slipping away. I read her words over and over, hoping I'd misunderstood, but the truth was clear. My Amelia, the woman I had trusted above all else, was cheating on me. And that was only the beginning. When you find out your wife has been unfaithful, your mind goes into overdrive. Questions claw at your sanity. Why? With whom? How long has this been going on? And worst of all, what do I do now? But nothing prepares you for the moment you realize that the betrayal isn't confined to a single thread. It's a tangled web, one you're now caught in. Olivia and I talked late into the night after her initial message. The words she spoke felt surreal, like they were happening to someone else. Her husband, Ethan, had been acting strange for months, distant, defensive, and glued to his phone. When she finally broke down and checked his texts, the truth spilled out in full color. Ethan and Amelia had been seeing each other for 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of deception and lies, all while I was none the wiser. Olivia forwarded me screenshots of their conversations. Explicit, flirtatious, and painfully detailed. Seeing my wife's words to another man, words she used to say to me, made me physically ill. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I stared at Amelia across the breakfast table, trying to mask the whirlwind of emotions tearing through me. She was scrolling on her phone. As usual, her face lit up with a faint smile. Was she texting Ethan right now? The thought made my stomach churn. I had a decision to make. Confront her outright or gather more evidence. I chose the latter. Confrontation could wait. I needed to be prepared for every excuse, every manipulation she might throw my way. Olivia agreed to help me dig deeper. Ethan, it turned out, had a guilty conscience. He admitted to the affair after she found the texts, though he begged her to keep it between them. It was a mistake, he told her. It didn't mean anything. But when Olivia pressed further, his story began to unravel. Ethan's mistake wasn't a one-off. It was part of a larger pattern. Olivia revealed that in his guilt-ridden confession, Ethan had let something slip. Amelia wasn't just seeing him. She'd also been involved with his best friend, Caleb. A double betrayal. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife, Amelia, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had managed to entangle herself with not one, but two men, shattering two marriages in the process. My fury burned hotter with every revelation, but a sliver of doubt gnawed at me. Was Olivia telling me the full truth? Or was this her way of deflecting blame onto Amelia? I decided to investigate on my own. Over the next few days, I began piecing together a picture I didn't want to see. Amelia's work trips coincided suspiciously with Ethan's schedule. Her late nights writing overlapped perfectly with Caleb's frequent visits to the city. It all fit too neatly. One night, while she showered, I went through her phone. My hands shook as I unlocked it. Thankfully, she hadn't changed her password. At first, there was nothing obvious. Her texts were clean, her emails unremarkable. But then I checked her hidden photos folder. My heart stopped. There they were, selfies with Ethan at what looked like a hotel, her in a bathrobe and him shirtless in the background. Another photo showed her at a vineyard, one I knew she'd visited on a girls' weekend. Except in this picture, Ethan's reflection was caught in a window behind her. My mind reeled as I pieced together the lies she'd spun to cover her tracks. But it wasn't just Ethan. Buried deeper in her photo album, I found a picture of Caleb. It was taken at night by a fire pit, Amelia's bare feet resting next to his. The caption read, "Perfect night." Perfect night? For who? Certainly not for me. I copied everything, photos, dates, and details, onto my own device. If she was going to try and spin this, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was calculated, deliberate. And now, I had the proof. That night, I lay awake next to her, staring at the ceiling while she slept soundly beside me. My mind raced, my emotions ping-ponging between anger, heartbreak, and the cold clarity of what needed to happen next. Confronting Amelia wouldn't be enough. I needed to ensure she felt the weight of her choices, not just from me, but from everyone she had betrayed. And that was when Olivia called again. Her voice was tense, but this time it wasn't just about Ethan. Caleb had confessed something to her, something that blew the situation wide open. Amelia, it seemed, had betrayed Caleb too. Amelia didn't just cheat. She created a soap opera of betrayal that had left wreckage in its wake. And now, I wasn't the only one untangling her lies. When Olivia called to tell me about Caleb, I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "No," she said, "Caleb told me everything. He and Amelia weren't just a fling. They were a full-blown relationship. But it ended because—" She hesitated. "Because she cheated on him too." I nearly dropped the phone. "Wait, are you saying—" "Yes," Olivia interrupted, her tone bitter. "Amelia cheated on Caleb with Ethan. It was almost too much to process. The woman I had loved and trusted had turned 3 marriages into a battlefield, with everyone left scrambling to piece together what the hell had happened." I pressed Olivia for details, and she relayed the sordid story Caleb had confessed. Amelia and Caleb's relationship started during one of her supposed work trips. It began as a fling but grew into something deeper, or so Caleb believed. He described their nights together with painful nostalgia, talking about how she made him feel alive, like he mattered in a way he hadn't felt in years. But his bliss was shattered when he found out about Ethan. A drunken Ethan, to be precise, who spilled the beans during a night out. According to Olivia, Caleb confronted Amelia immediately. She didn't deny it. Instead, she brushed him off, telling him it didn't matter because what they had was different. Caleb ended things on the spot, but hadn't told Olivia until recently, when the storm of revelations forced his hand. As Olivia spoke, my anger grew cold and calculated. Amelia's infidelity wasn't impulsive. It was methodical, almost pathological. She hadn't just betrayed me. She betrayed everyone who trusted her. And now, The pieces were all falling into place. That night, I decided it was time to confront her. I'd been sitting on the evidence for days, documenting everything to ensure I couldn't be gaslit or manipulated. The photos, the receipts, the texts. Each piece felt like a weapon I'd crafted to cut through her inevitable excuses. I waited until after dinner. She was scrolling on her phone, sipping wine on the couch, when I walked into the living room. My heart pounded, but my face was calm. "We need to talk," I said. She glanced up, surprised by my tone. "About what?" "About this." I tossed my phone onto the coffee table, the screen displaying one of the pictures of her and Ethan. Her face went pale as she stared at it, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. "No," she began, her voice trembling. "I can explain." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice low but firm. "I'm not interested in excuses. I've been piecing this together for weeks. The trips, the late nights, the lies. How long did you think you could keep this up?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. I laughed bitterly. "What exactly was supposed to happen, Amelia? Were you planning to keep juggling Ethan and Caleb forever? Did you think I'd never notice?" She flinched at my words, but didn't respond. I pressed on. "You destroyed our marriage. But that wasn't enough, was it? You had to drag 2 other people's lives into this mess." Her tears spilled over, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt, shame, or fear of losing the comfortable life we'd built together. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "Well, congratulations," I snapped. "You failed miserably." After hours of arguments, accusations, and her half-hearted apologies, I left the house. I needed space to think, to breathe. I drove aimlessly through the city, my mind racing with the reality of what Amelia had done. The woman I had loved for years was a stranger now, her actions a labyrinth of deceit I couldn't untangle. I called Olivia to update her. She wasn't surprised by Amelia's lack of remorse, but admitted she was facing her own battles with Ethan. "He's trying to spin it like Amelia was the aggressor," she said, "as if he's some innocent bystander who got caught up in her games." "Typical," I muttered. "And Caleb?" "Broken," she replied. "But he's not the type to make a scene. He's just done with it all." The more we talked, the more I realized how far Amelia's betrayal had reached. This wasn't just about our marriage anymore. It was about the chaos she'd unleashed on everyone around her. By the time I returned home, Amelia was in the bedroom, sitting silently on the edge of the bed. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red and swollen. "What now?" she asked, her voice small. "I'm filing for divorce," I said bluntly. Her face crumpled, and she began to sob, but I felt no sympathy. The damage was done, and there was no going back. As I left the room, her voice broke through the silence. "Noah, please. I'll do anything to fix this. But some things can't be fixed. When betrayal explodes like a grenade, the shrapnel doesn't just hit the target. It sprays everywhere, leaving devastation in places you never thought possible." Amelia's lies had been carefully woven, but now the whole web was unraveling. I didn't just want to confront her anymore. I wanted to watch the entire house of cards collapse. The day after I told Amelia I was filing for divorce, I got an unexpected call. It was Caleb. Olivia must have given him my number because I hadn't reached out. His voice was calm but strained, like someone teetering on the edge of fury. "We need to meet," he said. "There's something you need to know about Amelia and Ethan." I wasn't thrilled about meeting the guy my wife had cheated with, but curiosity outweighed my pride. We agreed to meet at a quiet bar downtown, the kind of place where secrets go to die. When I walked in, Caleb was already nursing a whiskey, his sharp suit looking more like armor than an outfit. "She played us both," he said without preamble as I slid into the booth across from him. "And Ethan? He's worse than you think." I raised an eyebrow, motioning for the bartender to bring me a drink. "Worse how?" Caleb leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Amelia wasn't just sleeping with him. She was feeding him information." "Information?" I echoed, confused. "About you," he said grimly. "Your work, your finances." She told him about your biggest deals, your clients. Apparently, Ethan's been using that to his advantage in his own business dealings. The words hit me like a sucker punch. It wasn't enough that she'd betrayed me emotionally. She'd turned my career into collateral damage. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady the storm of rage brewing inside me. Do you have proof? Caleb slid his phone across the table. On the screen were messages between Amelia and Ethan, casual but unmistakable in their intent. Ethan asked about my projects, Amelia obliged with details, and together they laughed about how clueless I must be. It wasn't just adultery, it was espionage. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice cold. Caleb took a long sip of his drink before replying. Because I'm done letting her win. She didn't just screw over you. She screwed over me. Ethan told me everything when he was drunk, probably thinking I'd let it slide. I won't. I stared at the messages, my mind spinning with possibilities. Ethan's betrayal wasn't just personal. It was professional. He'd exploited my wife's access to me for his own gain, and now I had enough to burn him to the ground. That night, I didn't go home. I needed time to think, to plan. Sitting in my car in a dimly lit parking lot, I called Olivia. We need to meet, I said, echoing Caleb's words. She agreed without hesitation. When we met at a coffee shop the next morning, Olivia looked as exhausted as I felt. She sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. What's going on? She asked. I told her everything Caleb had revealed. Her expression shifted from shock to rage to something colder, calculation. Ethan's been using your business? And Amelia's been helping him? Seems that way, I said. But here's the thing. Caleb's willing to testify. If we play this right, we can take them both down. Her eyes gleamed with determination. Let's do it. We spent the next few hours strategizing. Olivia had already contacted a lawyer, and now, armed with Caleb's testimony and the mountain of evidence we'd collected, we had the upper hand. Amelia and Ethan weren't just cheaters. They were accomplices in something far bigger, and we were going to make them pay. When I returned home later that evening, Amelia was waiting for me, her face pale and drawn. Where were you? She asked, her voice trembling. Not that it's any of your business, I said coldly, but I was meeting with someone who's going to help me make sure you and Ethan get exactly what you deserve. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. Noah, please, you don't understand. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for things to go this far. Save it, I snapped. I've heard enough of your lies to last a lifetime. She broke down, sobbing, but I felt nothing. The woman I had loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, a stranger who had shattered our life for her own selfish gain. The next week was a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers and investigators. Caleb provided more damning evidence, and Olivia and I worked together to build an airtight case. Meanwhile, Amelia tried desperately to salvage what was left of her reputation, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. The final blow came when Ethan's wife, spurred on by Olivia, filed her own lawsuit, citing not only infidelity but also fraud. Ethan's business was investigated, and the cracks in his empire quickly became apparent. By the time the dust settled, he was facing not only divorce but also criminal charges. As for Amelia, the divorce was swift and brutal. I got everything: the house, the car, and the satisfaction of knowing she'd be walking away with nothing but her shattered pride. Caleb and Olivia moved on with their lives, and though the pain of betrayal lingered, there was something cathartic about seeing justice served. Amelia's triple betrayal had destroyed 3 marriages, but in the end, it was her own life that lay in ruins. And as I walked away from the courtroom, free at last, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The aftermath of betrayal doesn't hit all at once. It unravels over days, weeks, and months, like a wound that refuses to heal. For Amelia, Ethan, Caleb, and even Olivia, the fallout from the tangled web they'd woven left a trail of devastation. The day the divorce was finalized, Amelia sat in the courtroom, a shadow of the woman I once knew. Gone was her confident charm, replaced by hollow eyes and a trembling frame. The judge ruled decisively. The house was mine, the savings split, and no alimony. She had no grounds to argue. Her deceit was well documented. As she signed the papers, her pen trembling in her hand, I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. The woman who had destroyed 3 marriages would now have to live with the wreckage she created. Amelia moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, her once glamorous lifestyle reduced to budgeting for rent and groceries. She tried to reach out to me once, an email begging for forgiveness, promising she would spend the rest of her life making it up to me. I didn't reply. My silence was all the answer she needed. Her professional life wasn't spared either. When word spread about her role in Ethan's corporate sabotage, her reputation in the industry crumbled. Editors stopped calling. Opportunities dried up. She started freelancing, but her name was tainted, and her once loyal connections avoided her like a disease. For someone who thrived on admiration and success, the isolation was a slow, suffocating punishment. Ethan's empire falls. Ethan, the puppet master in this twisted game, faced the harshest consequences. Caleb's testimony and Olivia's lawsuit exposed his misuse of confidential business information, sparking a corporate scandal that rocked his company. His investors bailed, his board ousted him, and his competitors circled like vultures, picking apart the remains of his once thriving empire. Public humiliation followed. Articles branded him a cheat in both his personal and professional lives, and his fall from grace became a cautionary tale in the industry. His wife, Olivia, took him to the cleaners in the divorce. She walked away with the house, full custody of their kids, and a sizable chunk of his remaining assets. Ethan was left living in a rented condo, drowning in debt and disgrace. But the cruelest twist came from Caleb. As part of his revenge, Caleb anonymously leaked Amelia and Ethan's personal texts, messages filled with mocking jabs about Ethan's wife and Caleb himself. The scandal spiraled further, leaving Ethan with no allies and nowhere to hide. Caleb's quiet exit. Of the 3, Caleb disappeared the fastest. He sold his house, packed up, and moved to a cabin upstate, leaving behind the chaos of the city. Unlike Ethan and Amelia, he didn't crave the spotlight. His betrayal may have been quieter, but it haunted him all the same. I heard through Olivia that he spent his days writing a novel, apparently, pouring his guilt and bitterness onto the page. Caleb never contacted me again, and I didn't seek him out. He was just another player in the tragedy Amelia orchestrated, another casualty in a game none of us wanted to play. Olivia and I, a new beginning. Strangely, Olivia and I became unlikely allies in the wreckage. It started as phone calls, updates on the legal proceedings, sharing the latest twist in the scandal. But over time, those calls turned into conversations about everything else. Our lives before the betrayal, the things we'd lost, and the hope we struggled to rebuild. Months after the dust settled, she invited me for coffee. It wasn't a date. Not officially, but there was something unspoken in the air. We spent hours talking, laughing in a way neither of us thought we'd be capable of again. She was sharp, witty, and painfully honest about her flaws. It was refreshing to sit across from someone who wasn't hiding anything. We started seeing each other more often, slowly piecing together lives that had been shattered. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was cautious, deliberate, and rooted in mutual understanding. Olivia knew my scars, and I knew hers. There were no illusions, just 2 people finding solace in each other's company. Amelia's final plea. One rainy evening, nearly a year after the divorce, I got a letter from Amelia. It was handwritten, the ink smudged in places, as if she'd cried while writing it. She begged for a chance to meet, to explain herself. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a park, the rain drizzling softly as we sat on a bench under a tree. She looked fragile, her once vibrant presence dimmed by months of solitude and regret. "I don't expect forgiveness," she began, her voice shaky. "I just want you to know, I was lost. I made mistakes, and I hurt people who didn't deserve it. But I loved you, Noah. I always did. You still here, searching for sincerity. If you loved me, why did you destroy everything we built?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. Her answer was a whisper. "I don't know. Maybe I thought I needed more. Maybe I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. But I see it now, and I'll never stop regretting what I did." Her tears fell, but I didn't feel the need to comfort her. The part of me that had once loved her was long gone. I stood, the rain soaking through my coat as I looked down at her. "I hope you find peace, Amelia," I said simply. "But I've already found mine." I walked away, leaving her in the rain, a fitting end to the storm she'd brought into my life.